arrogant, pompous, obnoxious, vain, cruel, persecuting, distasteful, verbose, a show-off. There's no question that I'm all of those things. I think you should all know that Burt Reynolds is a very dear friend of mine, that he and Dinah Shore are going to the Super Bowl game Sunday with Emmy and me, and we are going suitably attired. He is going in the nude, and my vital organ will be covered. There'll be a tape over my mouth.
Tell me, how does it feel? I know you ask people this. Now I'm going to ask you. How does this feel? How does it feel to be this important that you have 2,500 guys that are paying quite a lot of money to see you today?
Well, I think it's long overdue, don't you, Mel? I think
that's our humble Howard.
Every person's performance life falls into different categories. And people ask me, well, when did I really become big, on the assumption that I have become big in the entertainment world? Well, the first thing was Muhammad Ali and the whole series of dialogues on Wide World of Sports.
Remember when we got thrown out of the country and we had to go up and fight Chevalo, and then we did the 3 European fights, right? And everybody said keep Ali out of the country because he said he got nothing against the Viet Cong, right? The great prophet, right? One guy, the only guy that went to Ali's defense was Howard Cosell.
It was a tragic thing to see such a totality of ignorance, because that's what it amounted to. The press endorsed a violation first of the Fifth Amendment guarantee of due process, as you know. My God, the man refused to take a step. There had been no arraignment, no grand jury presentment, no indictment, no trial, no conviction, no appeal to the next court, no appeal to the court of last resort, which the Supreme Court would certainly hear in this kind of case because of the constitutional guarantees involved, and the man is stripped of his duly achieved property right and his right to earn a living. Now they license deserters. They licensed deserters in the very state where the politically appointed boob of a boxing commissioner had deprived Ali of his 2 rights, so now they've defied the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. And there wasn't a single damn sports writer I can name outside of Jerry Eisenberg, even great writers like Red Smith, though they might have been sympathetic to Ali, who took the time and had the determination to go into a law library or to talk to the dean of a law school or a constitutional lawyer and find out what the law is all about, what the guarantees are all about. Instead, they were all clamoring at this time for law and order in the United States. Well, you know what it meant to them? A policeman with a billy stick hitting some bum in the street. They don't even understand that law and order begins with the fundamental law of the land, the Constitution and its multiple amendments. So I believe that in general, and I don't care any longer about what they write about me. They can't win. I'm not being a big shot. They've lost. They can't lay a glove on me. In general, they are a disgrace to the journalism they pretend to be a part of.
Well, that's correct. And it wasn't a question even of doing work. You know, I had Jimmy Jacobs do a memo for me of all of the people who had been convicted of crimes, rape, kidnapping, desertion, who were given licenses by the New York State Athletic Commission. It was a 3- or 4-page memo, and I sent it to every writer that I could think of, and there wasn't one of them that wrote anything about it.
And you know, it was almost conspiratorial, it seemed to me, the way certain classes of sports writers came out of the woodwork to go after me. By the way, don't overgeneralize. There are still some great sports writers in this country today. But generally speaking, yes. Put it on the table. They're a seedy lot, hangers-on, traveling with the clubs, living with the clubs, dugout mentalities, no horizons, No awareness of Vietnam, no awareness of packing the Supreme Court, no awareness of the great crises of the great cities. All I'm saying is you can't overgeneralize about newspaper writers, but you can generalize to a degree about the absence of literacy and culture of sports writers in America.
I think Howard's antagonism towards sports writers is really based on fear. That we all know hate and fear are very intertwined. And Howard is afraid of what sports writers are going to say about him, and he's very sensitive to what they do say about him. I remember writing a story quoting Burt Lancaster one time, kind of insulting Howard as a TV commentator before the first Ali-Frazier fight, and Howard called me up the next morning and was very upset that I should write about it. And actually all I was doing was being a journalist. The man said it, and I reported it.
In this day and age, this kind of talk can sound maudlin. I'm aware of that. But Emmy's my life. She has been for 28 and a half years. And I don't go anywhere without her. I wouldn't do Monday Night Football. I wouldn't travel. I don't go anywhere without Emmy.
I think she gets tired of traveling at times. But my father doesn't like to travel without her. It's as simple as that. He's a baby on the road. He'll call her and tell her the bed is hard and he can't sleep.
He is basically a very insecure person. He's got the courage of his convictions. I mean, he's got guts. I mean, he's taken unpopular positions, but he'll always, at heart, be a little Brooklyn Jewish boy who wasn't sure he's ever going to make it.
Emmy is a balance wheel. Without her emotional equilibrium, without her stability, I wouldn't last a day. I'd have gotten myself fired 5 million times. Emmy doesn't talk about my work on the air. She's quite proud of that. She's very proud of the stands I've taken. She knows what I've tried to do, and she thinks I've done well at it. Emmy is extremely critical of me in my dealings with people, my impatience, especially with people who are a little slower. All right, gentlemen, I'm slating. This will be the first of 3 radio shows to be fed in. Yeah? What is it, Jack? Hello again, everyone. This is Howard Cosell. Speaking of sports, I'll be feeding in 3 shows. I'm feeding in tonight's net, tonight's local, and tomorrow morning's net. Of course they can. We're running out of time. They're going to have to get a substitute if we don't do it right now because the halftime highlights are going to come in. Where is Ken Coughlin? This is unbelievable. This is the 5:25 Eastern Time Network show for today. Hello again, everyone. This is Howard Cosell. What happened? How could they have done that to him? I mean, well, what's going on now? That's absurd. All they got to do is roll a tape. I mean, that's ridiculous. If there was a tone from Delco, why wasn't I stopped? Why did they have me go through all of that? I've still got highlights to do. I've got voice to preserve and a game to do. I'm sorry, I cannot do it. I've got the highlights coming up. Tell them to get Ken Coughlin to the phone. He's going to have to put on a substitute. They don't ask a lot of me, do they? Tell the public about this. This is ridiculous. That's a disgraceful. Hello again, everyone. This is Howard Cosell. We'll be bringing you this Saturday on ABC's Wide World of Sports the heavyweight championship bout between Joe Frazier and George Foreman at Kingston, Jamaica. Here he comes from the Mexico City Arena. representing the United States in the heavyweight classification, 19-year-old George Foreman.
Can't hold up my pants. Just
Listen, I just left Frazier.
Man, is that all you got to say good this morning?
Huh?
No, that's not all you got to say good.
I think he's uptight about you.
Is that right?
I don't think he likes you. But he seems to think that you're going to be very easy. He really does.
Aren't you feared that somebody's going to get you before it's over with?
Nah, never had any trouble with anyone, George, except for Liston. You know that. Only Sonny. Come on, you know I've got to tell the truth, George.
What you going to be saying about me? When Joe Frazier starts coming and I start getting...
I'll tell it like it is. If you get beat up, I'll...
Look out there. 10-4. Roger and out. I'm going to leave you.
I'll tell it like it is. If you kill him, I'll say it that way. If he kills you, I'll say it that way. How are you? Good to see you.
Howard Cosell.
The hollow laughter. I want you to get the Philadelphia Sporting Press. Shoot them. We'll give them a circulation unprecedented in the Chronicle of the Medium.
In this epic.
Who's that second writer, Jim? The young one? He's got some ability. The other guy belongs to the Age of Magellan. Hello, Barney.
How are you?
How are you?
Silly.
Well, looking for a scrap here and a scrap there, just trying to eke out a fair subsistence in a perilous trade. Walter Red Smith. What do you make of this fight, Red?
I think it could be a good fight for 7 or 8 rounds. What do you think?
The truth? I think Foreman might kill him. Literally kill him.
He is all over Frazier again. He has Frazier in the corner. Frazier's knees buckled. He is down. He is down for the 4th time in the fight. George Foreman is doing the Joe Frazier what he did as a 19-year-old to a veteran Russian, a fellow named Iona Shapulis, in October of 1968 in the Mexico City Arena. A quick left from George. Another. Frazier is down for the 5th time in this fight. 5th time. 3 times in the first round, twice in the second. Target practice for George Foreman. It is target practice. Frazier is ready to go again. Joe is standing. There he goes. 3 times. 3 times. The fight is stopped. No, it is not. It is not stopped. Angie Dundee is screaming, stop it. Bertie Pacheco, Ali's doctor next to me. It is over. It is over. It is over in the 2nd round. George Foreman is the heavyweight champion of the world. Congratulations.
Well, first I'd like to say, Howard, when you told me I could do it, I didn't need no nothing else. You said,
George Foreman came here, did his thing, one of the great upsets of boxing history, a very short fight, one of the most exciting victories, I think, in the history of boxing. You heard that Foreman said he dedicated the fight to me, didn't you? Did I tell you?
We got fantastic material.
Did I tell you that Foreman would do it?
We got the whole thing on film.
I suppose, analytically, a lot of my drive stems from the way I grew up. In Brooklyn, during the Depression, Jewish, fighting a group of studs Lonigans, running away from them, to get to school safely, to get home safely. That was part of life then. That's when I was a sports fan. We used to get out of school. PS9 was at Vanderbilt Avenue and Sterling Place. It was the most important grade school in New York City because it was the track and field champion every year. We had marvelous stars. Marvelous stars. And Vanderbilt Avenue and Sterling Place was about 15 blocks from Ebbets Field. We'd get out at 3 o'clock. The games would begin at 3:15 in those days. I'd run the 15 blocks, lie on my stomach on Bedford Avenue, look under the center field fence, and I'd see my hero, Johnny Frederick, the center fielder who set the pinch hit record. They didn't even have numbers on their backs then, but you knew your ball players. You knew Rube Bressler throwing away, just as Roger Kahn wrote in The Boys of Summer. He grew up the same way I did. I'd live on Eastern Parkway, and I'd hear the roar of the crowd, and I'd say, by God, Helton, that's my brother's name, Camilli's done it again. And, you know, you just knew. You knew with a certain roar that it was Camilli hit the homer, and you knew if it was Lavagetto getting the hit down the right center alley. You could tell from the timbre. And, of course, there was Red Barber. It was his age. And that's the way I grew up, together with the Catholic kids from St. Teresa's Parish, running away from them, hiding from them, always after the little Sheeny. And we wound up years later, Emmy and I, going into a restaurant on Franklin Avenue in Brooklyn. I was now a major, and the very kid who was at me again and again and again through all those years, the little Catholic kid, he was in that restaurant in a private uniform. And you know what? I began to sweat with fear because I didn't want to take it out on him, and I didn't want to make a scene while I was a field grade officer in the military. And then the fear turned around. Maybe he's still going to come at me, and he's only a private. And then what do? Because now I was growing up, and I was 6'1½", and you know how big he was? 5'7". He was a runt, a midget. I could have killed him. But it all ran through me, the whole background, right through me in that restaurant. I'll never forget it as long as I live. One of the things that sustained me and helped me is the change in the society. The fact that the young people have grown up in a manner that we never grew up. We were talking before. I never heard of the word ecology when I was a kid. Drug abuse? I never heard of it when I was a kid. They grow up with all of this, and they grow up with continuing war. The young people today don't know what it is to live in this country and not have a war. World War II ended, and then there was Korea, and then there was this terrible thing in Vietnam. And why do you think the young people are turned on or turned off, however you want to phrase it? They've been asked to live by standards that were hypocritical, that the parents never practiced, and they are wanting to listen to somebody who puts it on the table, somebody who is willing to back a Muhammad Ali. So they're not disposed to grow up believing that suddenly you go through a looking glass and there the world is pure, the world of sport. They've grown up in an age of baseball carpetbagging. Now you'd think there was really something to managing a Major League Baseball team. Instead, they play musical chairs. I've seen Harry Walker send the wrong lineup up to home plate 3 times in one game. I couldn't believe it. When he was managing the Pirates, I was in the booth with Bob Prince. That's the kind of people, and I like Harry, you know, he's a simple enough soul. But to manage a baseball team, my goodness. And here they are, still no black manager. Can't find a qualified man. The qualified men are the Harry Walkers of the world, the Mayo Smiths. But the single fulcrum that projected me into national prominence was Monday Night Football, 3 hours in prime time. Bill Cosby doesn't get it. Carson doesn't get it. Lucy doesn't get it. Ronan Martin don't get it. We got 3 hours on Monday night in prime time. And don't tell me it's not entertainment, because it is. I've been all over this country, and I've seen those young people stand and cheer.
Yeah, you want me to give you an opinion on Howard Cosell? He got a terrific voice. And I think that he's not boring. Thank God he's not boring. I like him. Because he's not bland. Not bland. And I think he's actually probably smarter than he lets on.
What about Howard Cosell, the writer?
Well, Howard Cosell has never pretended to be a literary stylist. I did a book. It's a bestseller, beyond my wildest dreams. I'm very gratified about that. But I do not pretend for 1 minute that I have written the Old Testament.
The reason I think we've had so much publicity about Howard is that, for better or for worse, Howard has become a part of Americana. He is part of our Monday night existence, whether we like it or not.
Howard loves to talk. He's completely spontaneous, never uses notes. He's constantly being invited to talk to college students and businessmen. Last November, he spoke at the same convention as President Nixon, the Associated Press Managing Editors Convention in Florida. He was asked by AP to present his opinions on sports journalism. Not only did he point out some flaws in sports print journalism, he called his own industry, sports broadcasting, gutless.
No person has spoken more on campus in every nook and cranny of this country over the past 3 years than I, Howard Cosell. I also know something about my business and about your business. Not because of what's written about me, but because of Monday Night Football. I remember it when we began it. I remember how CBS and NBC laughed at ABC and said, prime time, a football game, it'll never work. So they laughed at us. Well, we could have done those Monday night games your way, the way your sports writers still clamor for. We could have done them the CBS and NBC way. We didn't. We took a brash lawyer from the sinister northeastern cabal and put him together with a Texas corn pone. We didn't treat with the games in the puristic past of the medieval sports writers, so many of whom you employ, fitting consorts, each of them, for the age of William of Orange. But we did this thing our way, the contemporary way. We reached the whole of the society. What happened? The competitive network screamed at the end of the year, it's not football, it's entertainment. What the hell did they think we were dealing with? The sanctification of a saint? You're damn right it's entertainment. But we brought a lot more than that to it. All of the things they failed to do through the years, and I'm not here to arrogate ourselves. I've read enough of that pomposity and arrogance that's supposed to be attached to me. That comes out of bitterness, envy, and absence of co-equal success. Nothing more, nothing less. How do you people come into it? What do you write about? You've got your pale repeat recounts the next morning of the contest that took place the previous day. Already seen on television by millions. So you make no contribution whatsoever in that regard to the contest. What are your people doing? Writing about us in television and our failures. Not illuminating the scene, not columnization insights, not interpretive reporting, not things that will introduce new readers to your paper, that will suddenly get them interested in the events of the past that you so religiously and even ritualistically adhere to. I mean principally baseball, which belongs to the 19th century. But in fact, you're writing about us. How many of you look to your own papers, have sports writers who are still writing Monday Night Football's a disaster? Whom are they in touch with? Whom are they writing for? How do you permit this to go on? What kind of surrealistic nonsense is this? They're not in touch with contemporary America. They can't possibly write for it. They want some puristic version of some former jock saying Dwayne Thomas for 3. We'll have another look at that. And you've got 2 million tune-outs in prime time.
I think Howard is an intellectual bully in many respects. He likes to dish it out verbally, but quite often he can't take it as well as he can dish it out. Once we were having dinner at a New York restaurant at a long, large table, and Howard was down at the other end and I was at this end, and Howard kept shouting. You could hear it 10 tables away. Anderson, I can make you a great columnist. Listen to me, pay attention to what I tell you, you'll be a great columnist. After a few minutes of this, I said to him as calmly as I could, Howard, I wish it were Monday night, I could turn the volume down. But the point of the story is that about an hour later, we were, after having given me all this advice, an hour later we were in another place waiting for a table, which was rather surprising. I didn't think Howard had to wait for tables. We were waiting there, and he began telling us how he was going out to Hollywood to make TV shows and do some movies. And I said to him, Howard, I think you're creating a problem for yourself where you're getting to the point in your career where you're beginning to take yourself too seriously. And he huffed up for a moment, he turned and he said, have I ever given you advice? But the ultimate point, I think, of this story is that Howard is now thinking about running for the United States Senate in 1976. he's really beginning to take himself too seriously, because his credibility as an announcer on Monday Night Football or at fights is vastly different from the credibility someone needs to run and win in the United States Senate.
I'd like to know what makes you think you are qualified to be a United States Senator. Obviously, you're a well-known national personality. You're a journalist, and you have a lot of recognition. But are you qualified for politics, for government and leadership?
What makes me qualified? I think, Wick, you, and I think the people who have heard me speak know what makes me qualified. A degree in and a career at law, which includes an editorship of one of the major law reviews of this country, and thus a very full knowledge of constitutional law, of government and government procedures, and all of the rest. Almost automatically, that makes me better qualified than 90% of the political hacks who run for public office in this country. But secondly, in that career at law, a long experience in representing labor, which, by the way, began in the military in World War II when I was representing the Army against the ILA at a time when Joe Ryan struck the tugs on us during war. Third, that very career in the military, where I started as a private and wound up as the youngest major in the Army's service forces in World War II within 2 years, and in the responsible position of manpower control at the largest military base then in the world, the New York Port of Embarkation. Fourth, a great communication with the young people of this country on campus and an understanding of their feelings and problems. I know a lot about business, and all of this deriving, of course, from my law career. In a word, then, or in a nutshell, Wick, you would be hard put to find 10 other people in the United States better qualified for the United States Senate.
We can take one more question to the microphone.
I'm Ed Kelly, Thomasville, Georgia. Mr. Cosell, yours was a great speech, sir, and if I had the opportunity, I would vote for you for senator. I believe in everything you say.
You've got a very quick and evident intelligence.
I was hoping you would recognize that, sir. My question is, you addressing us as journalists on our shortcomings, which you certainly...
And correct. The shortcomings of my profession.
Correct. My question is it true that ABC put the quietus on you as it pertains to your remarks about pro football being a dog game and the threat of firing, removing...
I'm glad you asked that question, because such a column was written by a man in the Miami News named John Crittenden, who never called me. It's a totally false story. A similar column was written by Joe Falls in the Detroit Free Press, who never called me. It's a totally false story. And when I broke the Kansas City-Chicago Bears game at halftime this week, I said the score is 12-0, and if you like field goals, we've got a game. Nobody ever put the quietus on me or tried, least of all Pete Rozelle, because if he did, I'd expose it. Now, that's the kind of sports print journalism that I find utterly and totally obnoxious.
Well, welcome.
Well,
it's cramped. Good
to see you. It was a great flight. I love taking off from Santa Monica.
You look as big on TV as you do in person.
Now that's something to talk to my directors and producers about. That's sitting me in those low chairs. There's no excuse for that. That's not part of my contract.
Get a milk crate for you to sit on.
That's right. Something up high. Here I am, 6'1½", the body still lean, taut, tight, angular, supple, lithe, ready to go against Muhammad.
I mean, what's all this fuss about a sports announcer? Who have you ever whipped? Howard, you are a man of imagination. And this is why you excel so over other announcers. I wrote a saying once that says, the man who has no imagination stands on the earth. He has no wings, he cannot fly. I repeat, since you're an attorney, you might understand this wisdom. The man who has no imagination stands on the earth. He has no wings, he cannot fly. How would you have imagination? Motorcycle fell out there and cab driver, Cosell, let him see you. You know, everything goes out. Presidents go out, songs go out, cars and designs of clothes go out. One day Twiggy was in style. One day Raquel Welch was in style. One day Flip Wilson was in style. One day Bill Cosby was in style. One day I was in style. And still barely holding on. And this is your day. They'll soon get tired of hearing the name Howard Cosell. So enjoy it now. You're not going to be on top too long. Get as much as you can out of it. Have a good time, because all this publicity, special dinners for Howard Cosell in California, special dinners for Howard Cosell in New York, and whatever it is you got going, it's working, because here you are with me in a limousine in New York. Sports announcers don't ride with me in limousines, Howard.
And you don't feel that you've had a kind of special relationship with me in terms of our interviews? That they've been different from the other interviews?
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir. Totally different. I would say you keep me going. You keep me thinking. So therefore, your interviews are much more different from other ones, because they just come on a sport angle. They're not looking for things that, if you don't answer them right, you're in trouble. You have to be thinking at all time for yourself. You, William F. Buckley, David Susskind, David Frost, are all considered pretty heavy men with words. And it's like a boxing match. You have to be thinking at all times and looking for your right, because it might come at any time. Bela Lugosi?
Bela Lugosi.
You remind me of Bela Lugosi.
Weighing in tonight, 212 pounds, wearing the white trunks with the black stripe, the former heavyweight champion of the world, Muhammad Ali.
I've known Ali for so many years and so intimately. And I know that as a man, he's a chameleon, changing moves, changing personality. But I've never quite seen him the way he has been in the recent days. The fight begins, round one. In the background is Drew Brown Bundini, saying stick and move. A noisy assistant who's been in and out of the Ali camp for so many years. In favor one moment, out of favor the next. The referee, Dick Young, just yelled into the Ali corner, quiet Bundini down, or he's going to be thrown out of the arena. George Foreman is actually getting up to leave the arena. George, before you go, are you ever going to fight Ali? He just waved his hand in disgust. Not at me, at Muhammad. Fight is about over. Surprised by the split decision.
I want Joe Frazier. Told you I was ready, and you saw it. Now I'm going to get Joe Frazier. Then I think I'll retire, Foreman or not, so my record will be clean.
That, in effect, is a statement that you'll never fight George Foreman. Is that it?
I can't say it. The way he acts, he might not. But I want Joe Frazier first. Then if Foreman never fight me, I can say that I whooped everybody, even the men that whooped me, I came back.
Okay, Muhammad Ali, the victor, in a split decision over Kenny Norton. There's no question about it. I first came to national attention in all of the interviews I did with you on Wide World of Sports.
I think I'm the only athlete, black or white, regardless of what sport, that's wise enough to match wits with you.
You really believe?
I know that. I don't believe it, I know it. I don't think you have another man in this country wise as I am to you, to handle you like I do on a television. Rap wits with you. Brother got out of school on a D- average, and you're an experienced lawyer, and I can stand right here and hold a conversation with you on any subject, and if it was a battle, I'm sure I would win. Now, I've taken enough off of you. You can't fight, you can't throw no punches, You don't have no muscles. You've never had a physical contact with nothing in your life like sports, and you're going to stand up here and tell me about my legs and about football. You're going to know about everything. Well, I'm getting sick and tired of it, and I'm going to show the world there really ain't nothing to you.
Don't touch me. I'll beat your brains out.
There's a bunch of youth coming over here now. If he could switch his cameras around, he'll see a bunch of youth standing there now talking to us. Do you know this man?
Come on in, kids.
Who? Now, I want you all
You
to...
like Muhammad?
I want you all to answer me a question. Do you all ever see him interview me on television? Would you like to see me get angry one day and beat him up? You know, Howard, every college that I go to, not only every college, I don't understand. I mean, I realize that I've helped made you popular and you've helped made me popular, but I don't understand. I mean, no sports announcer have ever received such fame and national publicity. Every college I go to, even these little children here, I'm sure they don't know a lot of sports announcers, but all of you all know Howard Cosell, right? Yeah. Everybody know Howard Cosell. And this is wherever I go, every college, I'm sure these children here can bear witness that if I saw them today and I wasn't with you, say you all saw me and he wasn't around and we were talking, wouldn't one of you ask me about Howard Cosell? Yeah. Everybody, I don't know why. Look, it really makes me feel good because I say that I've made you in this country, but I really have.
Well, when they ask you that question at the campuses and universities, what do you say?
I say, yes, I've known Howard Cosell for quite a while. They say, do you really like him? I say, well, I don't like him. You know, I don't know him that well. He's a good associate. He speaks his piece. I speak my piece. That's about it. But I don't see him until it's time to work. One day I might see him on the street. One day in a coffee shop in New York. But I don't know too much about him. They say, well, sometimes don't you feel like slapping him? I mean, when he asks you all of these, right, girls? When he asks you all of these irritable questions, don't you sometimes want to slap him? And seriously. Huh? I don't know why, but you have a sassy attitude. Muhammad, you talk sassy. You don't look like you're the man you were 10 years ago. You talk like a bully. You talk like a big bad guy. And it makes people want to say, show him he ain't bad. And one day, why don't you just slap him or do something to him? Would you all seriously like to see me slap Howard Cosell? Yeah. I can't hear you. Yeah. You want to see me slap Howard Cosell? Yeah. I'm not going to do it yet, Howard.
Don't lift your hand to me, you understand?
Look, I tell you, just right now, you've never had an interview as great as this at Random Thing here in Central Park. You've never had an interview so colorful. You've never had a fighter or athlete to talk to you so. So what I'm saying is I'm making you famous right now. This is making you popular. So when you receive that book you just wrote a great book, and I understand it's selling. It's a big seller, just as big as, what's the name of this bird that flew around? Jonathan Living Seagull.
Not quite that good.
They say you are moving. So what I'm trying to say is that I want 15% of everything I created you to get. I'm not laughing.
You're not... But it's against your religious principles to be interested in money.
No, it's not against my principles to be interested in money. Now, I'm working. It's not against my religious principle to be paid for my work. Now, I want you to come in when that book starts selling. I want you to give me my cut, or I'm carrying you to Harlem up an alley.
You see, what most people don't understand is that Monday Night Football is only a very fractional, marginal part of my activities. Anything that gets me out of sports where I can show that I'm a whole human being with a mind and a spirit and with attitudes and concerns that are far transcendental to a silly little thing like who wins a football game or a baseball game.
The YMCA of Buffalo, New Erie County, first annual Jackie Robinson Award, presented to Howard Cosell in recognition of his dedication to furthering the cause of minority athletes, his championing of the underdog, support of college academics as well as sports, and his uniquely direct and honest reporting of sporting events. I'd like to ask Howard to stand and acknowledge the receipt of this award. I hope he will be back here many times in the future to speak to us, and I don't think we could have selected a better recipient.
I grew up in the shadows of Ebbets Field, as Roger Kahn did, who wrote The Boys of Summer. And the Brooklyn Dodgers were a very big part of my life. I was there when a pigeon-toed young man played a position strange to him, first base. And I saw how trembling and terrified he was and how he tried to shroud it. And I saw him go on to be the very greatest all-around athlete I've ever seen. And there are so many things you remember about a man like that. There are baseball things, of course. His trademark was his legs. You remember Bojangles Robinson, the tap dancer, doing his thing on top of the dugout at Ebbets Field, the frenzy that Jackie evoked. You remember even October 2nd, 1951, when Thompson hit the home run, and there was Jackie, waiting to see if he would touch home, when all of the other Dodgers had already gone heads bowed to that Polo Grounds clubhouse. You remember how Jackie left baseball, how he had to, how the sports writers turned on this extraordinary man who had had bestiality heaped upon him through all of the years, particularly in the beginning with Ben Chapman, how the St. Louis Cardinals had tried deliberately to spike him. Those are things you remember, but you remember how the sporting press turned upon him and said he had gone out fraudulently. He had defied the very character he had pretended to have. Why? Because the man had made an honest contractual commitment with Look magazine, had gotten large-scale payment for it to protect himself and his family. And he couldn't have been more honest. The dishonest ones were the sports writers who, for their own puny personal purposes, claimed that somehow Robinson had an obligation to them, to be preeminent above that to his family. I'm sure you remember all those things. Even then, there were the beginnings of troubles with Jackie Jr. Why, oh why in God's name did we ever name him Jackie Jr.? The poor lad beleaguered almost from the time he could talk. You're going to be like your father. You're going to be a great baseball player. No, Jackie and Rachel knew the mistake. Rachel especially. In the entire Jackie Robinson lifetime and my relationship with him, I never heard him say I. It was only we. His love affair with Rachel, I think, was one of the great stories of my lifetime. She is a glorious woman, once beautiful. She is worn and beaten now because of the loss of a son and the loss of a husband. But Jackie Robinson was nothing without Rachel. And so, quite properly, it was always we. Jackie Jr. early got into trouble, but he recovered from it because of the strength and help of his parents. And then Jackie Jr. went to war in Vietnam and became a drug addict. But he was rehabilitated from that, too. During all of this time, Jackie Sr. had been stricken by the most malignant form of diabetes. And he began to have all kinds of troubles. A coronary, a second coronary, blindness in one eye, encroaching blindness in the other, and then the death of Jackie Jr. We left his funeral together. We sat in the car. We talked about his whole life. Jackie, were you singled out, do you think, by God to bear some kind of burden? And he said, yes, I really think so. And we talked about the blindness. We talked about the diabetes. We talked about the loss of Jackie Jr. And then finally I said, Jack, how would you characterize your life? And he said, oh, we've had a great life. Again, the we. So much accomplished. So much yet before us. He died. In another month, he would have been totally blind in the second eye had he lived another year. This marvelous man, with this magnificent body, with his legs, his trademark, would have had to have both legs amputated. He died the way he lived. He was the most unconquerable man I've ever known. That's why I'm proud to be here tonight. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Howard Cosell.
A song to sing, and then a kiss. But more than this, I wish you love. July, a lemonade to cool you in the leafy glade. I wish you well.
Want to get a cigar?
I wish you love. And I agree that you and I could never be. I wish you shelter from the storm, a cozy fire to keep you warm. Wait, you'll get a chance to shoot me singing with Dinah. You didn't see me singing with her on her show, did you? She sang Mr. Wonderful to me, and I agreed. Now, that's television, because it's a mind, a heart, a spirit, and it's true. And it's people. That's what movies are made of.